All right. Thank you so much for listening to the OMG I'm Launching Podcast. Today, I have my good friend Lindsay with me. And honestly, I have no idea where this conversation is going to take us today. But welcome, Lindsay.
What a great introduction. Um, Thank you
Yeah.
for having me on. I am really appreciative, and it is. I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth either. So you are in
Yeah.
quite you are in for quite a treat.
Well, probably going to talk about, energy, spirituality, subconscious mind, because that's kind of your
Yeah,
thing. And you definitely had quite a little journey lately.
yeah,
So I'm sure something's going to come out of that.
yes.
But other than that, I really have no clue.
All right. Well, I
We can start off by you just sharing a little bit about yourself,
yeah,
obviously.
sure.
Let's start
So
there.
I am an energetic transformational healer. And what does that even mean? I guess it's probably a good place to start.
Yeah.
I work with people's energy because I can feel people's energy. I'm able to read it in a really unique and distinct way where I know just intuitively what's holding people back. And I can get down pretty far to uncovering what the root causes are. But what I also help people do is help people energetically heal themselves. So they no longer feel like they have to outsource the things that are holding them back. And so they can start insourcing. Is that even a word?
I
Who they are.
have no idea.
Well, it's a new word now. It's giving people the ability to bring back their power into their lives and helping them move forward in a way that feels really aligned with who they are, not who they're being told that they should be or they think that they need to be or what's right or what's wrong, right? They're able to release all of those definitions and
Mhm.
really sit in and believe in who they are inside. And so that's how I help people and I help them get back to who that is. And so they always have the answers that they need. And so that's pretty much what I do. and yeah, it's a beautiful,
Okay.
beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're both in the entrepreneurial world, and there's no doubt that there's a lot of self doubt, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of things holding us back without having no idea that it's actually holding us back,
Yeah,
and that's part of what you do, just trying to
yeah.
get us to move forward.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people think that they need to keep piling these things on top of, like of their knowledge base, right? Like I have to know
Mm,
something else. I mean, like this is not to say that you don't need skills. Skills are really important, but it's when
sure.
you've gathered all of these skills and you still feel like I'm unable to move forward, there's generally something there that's blocking you. And I say block in
Hmm.
a loose term because these it's what makes quote unquote sense, right? I do air quotes here for those who are listening, who are just listening. But it's a lot of people think that they need to fill these voids of like, I don't know enough. I need just one more thing to add onto my knowledge base, and then I can do this. And when
Hmm.
people are finding themselves in this space, one, they're leaking who they are, they're leaking energy to things that are totally outside themselves. And they're not taking back the energy that they need in order to source what they already know and who they've come here to be. And so I help people get back to that. And so they
Hmm.
can still get the skills or, but also implement the skills without being afraid or holding themselves back or being able to seek somebody to help them guide them in a different way and being able to integrate what they've learned instead of being like, oh my gosh, you still can't do it. That's where I come in. I help release that I
Hmm.
can't do it or I just don't know or I should be doing this, but I just can't get there. That's what I help people with.
Yeah, I mean, because that could be a hard thing. You just understanding, you have this, let's go to gut feeling, this intuition, this telling you to do something. But at the same time, you get this contradiction that's like, oh, well, yeah, well, not yet because I have to, ABC. Uh, yeah,
Or I'm not ready
it's just,
yet.
I'm not ready. Yeah, classic.
Yes, I'm not ready yet, or I don't know enough. Those
Hmm.
are, or I should be doing this, but I just can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's typically
You
what I
mentioned something about going. back to the root
Yeah.
cause of all this. What are what are typical root causes that you've seen working with your clients?
Well, I think first and foremost, talking about energy is probably a good place to start. So,
Hmm.
we are all made out of energy. This is science, right? Like,
Yep.
we are all energetic things.
Nothing crazy about that.
Yeah, I like it's what we are. It's science. I don't
Yeah.
I don't mess with what science says. I just say, "Oh, well that helps make sense to other people." Right? But with this energy that we carry, it is also in our thoughts. It's how we behave, it's how we act, it's how we carry ourselves. It's literally everything about us. We are energy.
Hmm.
And if you have something that's holding you down, your energy is going to be held down, right? But
Right.
if you don't have the things that are holding you down, then you can float up. And the thing
Hmm.
is that like if you've ever noticed like you're walking into a room and it just feels heavy and it doesn't feel good, then you're just like, that's energy, right? Like I think maybe there was an argument here or there was something that happened. Doesn't feel good. You feel that inside. Or like you
Hmm.
walk past somebody and you're like, gosh, I don't know who they are, but I love them.
Hmm.
That's energy too, right? And
Yeah.
so when you're looking at all of these things, most people have an energetic barometer. And I think we even spoke like way early this year. And you're even saying, like, is energy like an unspoken language? And I thought it was such a
Hmm.
great way for somebody to put it. It is an unspoken. It is an unspoken, like you can feel this. It is communicating something, but being able to control what it's communicating when it comes out of you, where your default is, that's what's going to be communicated. You can't fake energy. And so if somebody's just
No.
like, oh, let's go ahead and just put a smile on or fake it until you make it. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
People are going to
Hmm.
read the underlying energetic signature that you are carrying. But that doesn't mean that it's your default. It just means that that's where you are right now because our default is with happiness and calm and love. That's who we've come here to be, right? That's who we come here as. We come here completely untainted. But then we have the, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, the conditioning from other, people or, just what's outside and what we see. These are all the things that it's just like, oh, well, I need to fit in somewhere. I
Hmm.
need to get in here. And so then
Well,
you
you don't need to, but you
you
feel
you
like you
lose
need
you lose some of that. You start to
to.
question yourself and you start to bring in other people's thoughts. And other people's thoughts are energy, and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can be transferred. And so when you
Hmm.
think about it, uh, energy is that unspoken language, and it helps you get from one place to another. And it helps you either bring in who you want to bring in or repel who you want to repel. And sometimes really good energy, something that feels really elevated is pause. Can you hear my dog barking?
I can hear
Can
him,
I close
but
my door?
I've heard birds as well.
Do you mind
So,
if I close my door?
and no, no, no,
Okay, I'm
sure,
sorry.
go ahead.
We've got a lot of people going past my. Sorry about that. Now you can edit that part out. Okay,
Yes.
so do you remember where we were? Because I was totally channeling. Um,
Uh, Energy,
oh yeah.
repel, attract.
So our energy can sit here even if it's in really good energy. Your energy, good energy, can repel something that is not like your energy. So if you're bringing in good energy, you can attract good energy. And if somebody's not ready to receive that or not on the other end of being able to um, get to that space yet, you're actually going to repel them. You're going to repel
Hmm.
them so strongly where you might trigger them. Happiness triggers negative energy. Right? So
Who
if
would
you
have
see
thought that,
somebody
huh?
who's super happy, you're like, I'm so triggered by them and I don't know why. It's because your energy is just not in the same space. And
Hmm.
same thing with somebody who is on a more negative spectrum, right? Like somebody's like, oh, they're going to repel you too. Then you'd be like, oh, well,
Hmm.
that just means that I'm in a different place than they are. That's it.
Yeah, it's just not in
They're
sync,
just not in
basically.
sync. And so when we think about our businesses, You need
Hmm.
to be at the energetic level that you want to receive. And that doesn't mean that people who are not where they want to be won't be attracted to it because they're open to receiving that energy. And so, what I help people do is get to that energetic space where they're able to receive
Hmm.
the people that need their help, the people who are ready for that help. Because not everybody's going to be ready. Not yet.
No,
Sometimes
no,
it
no.
takes a little bit for people to get there. They're on their own journey. But I help people bring other people up so that they become the match for what they want to.
Mm.
Some people might call it manifestation. Sure. I just call it being an energetic match for what you want.
Makes
And
sense.
that's what it is. It's simple. I say it's
Yeah,
so
you're
simple.
saying it's exactly, but we all know that it's not that
It's not
simple,
that simple.
really. But obviously, it does make sense that you have to be on the same level to attract that same type of energy. It's a frequency thing.
It is.
You need to be in balance,
But
basically.
that doesn't mean that, like, you can't hold a lot of different things all at once. You don't have to be just happy or just love,
No, no,
right?
no.
And it's about understanding where some of these thoughts or these things that have happened or just, general, like you can kind of consider it like energetic sludge that's in there that
Okay.
just needs to be, like, cleaned out. That doesn't mean that there aren't parts of all of us, myself included, that we find as you go deeper and deeper and you're like, wow, I can go higher. I have something else to clean out. There's your opportunity. And so as you start to clean these things out, you might find more things that you need to clean out, kind of like if you're cleaning out your basement
Hmm.
and you're like, I'm just going to clean this corner. And then you're like, wow, I have the rest of the basement to clean. All right. Or you go into a closet and you're like, oh, I'm just going to find one thing. And you're like, oh, wait, there's so many more things to find. And then you just kind of go into that hole. But that doesn't mean that you have to stop. Like, you can stop cleaning for a little. But
Yeah, that sounds kind of like getting into flow, basically, where you
yeah,
you start something, but you don't really think about what you're starting on, so it's becoming this clean out, total
yeah.
clean out, and suddenly you've done it without even realizing it. That's kind of where you get into that flow of doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And so energy is a flow, right? Like sometimes you'll just
Hmm.
find yourself going on over into it and you're like, okay, that's good. That doesn't mean that you have to get stuck in a healing pattern too. We're always healing, we're always growing, we're always evolving. So instead of considering like it energy healing, you can consider it an involvement. And that
Right.
requires like cleaning out some stuff, but also living into and integrating it too. And so a lot of people think that I just need to heal. I just need to heal. I just need to heal. No, I'm like, you need to heal, integrate, heal, integrate. Let yourself continue to rise because otherwise, that if you don't integrate, your patterns will keep you going down. And these can be thought patterns,
Hmm.
old habits, ways of being, right? Because those things are patterned and automated in our mind. And it's until you can stop those patterns but integrate something different that you won't
Yeah,
continue to default to the things that were so heavy.
yeah. Like it kind of becomes like you got to take one step at a time, because if not, you're just gonna get stuck in trying to heal, trying to heal, trying to heal, and
People
it
are
doesn't really
addicted to
work.
healing because it feels good.
Yeah,
But they're like, oh, I healed
yeah,
this, I need to
obviously.
heal that. No, you can heal and enjoy the healing. You don't have to
Hmm.
keep going into it, right? You don't need that.
Yeah.
Healing is a good thing,
Hmm.
but so is integrating and living your life.
Yeah.
And then finding other
Taking that
areas.
action, putting it to.
Yeah,
Hmm.
finding other areas that where you have that opportunity to continue to go further if you want. It's a choice. Yeah,
Obviously. Yeah.
that's what it is.
No, this is so fascinating, to be honest. But this was just energy, and obviously energy plays a huge role in when you show up in your business, show up in your launches, whatever you do, and people might not even realize how much it actually affects the launch. I mean, you can blame it on messaging, you can blame it on the offer, you can blame it on all that stuff, but if you don't have the right energy behind all of this, it's not going to work anyway.
No, it's not going to work. But again, there are skills that are very important to launching. Messaging is important, but
Oh,
also it's the energy that you put
100%.
into your messaging, isn't it? It
Hmm.
becomes the messaging that you put into your sales page, the messaging and how you serve people. It's the heart that you put into it, it's the energy that you put into it. You can have the best written sales page. You can even hire a conversion copywriter. You can do all the things. You can spend tens of thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's going to happen unless your energy's in it, or
100%.
it won't go to plan.
I mean, you can still make some sales just based on what's written,
Yeah.
because that's, part of the knowledge that you acquired,
Yeah.
and you use it and you implement that. But imagine how much better it could go if you actually believed what you've written, right?
Yeah.
It's something about that, having the belief and stand by what you just put out there.
Yeah. It's, again, it's that unspoken language.
Hmm.
It's the language underneath what you're saying. And people, they have a BS barometer. And that BS
Oh yeah.
barometer is an energetic barometer. They're like, maybe next time. They
Yeah,
can't put their
it's not
finger
going
on
to
it
be a
because you
next
can't
time.
put your finger on energy. But like,
No.
this all sounds great, but something doesn't feel right.
Hmm.
Not,
Yeah, so they're making up excuses, which
yeah.
probably isn't the
Yeah.
excuse.
I had people in my last launch that were just like, I didn't even read your sales page. I just knew that I wanted to be in it. And I was like, that's great.
Hmm.
I'm like, but I spent so much time on my sales page. That's fine too. And,
Yeah.
I was an energetic match for what people were ready to receive, right? That doesn't mean that they
Hmm.
were all the way here yet. And that's okay. But I was able to hold the space for them too. And so
Hmm.
when you are also working with your energy, you have to make sure that you're able to hold the space for the people that you energetically are bringing into like your home, essentially. And your heart, who you are, is your home. And as if your heart or if your energy is not expansive enough, how many people do you think you're going to be able to hold? How can you hold other people's energy without being affected by their energy? Because every single time that you're affected by somebody, you're leaking your own.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Hmm.
It means that you haven't protected your own. Protecting it doesn't mean that you need to throw up these shields and these walls. I mean, like, you can't come in. It's actually the way that you protect your energy is with love, in the knowing in yourself, in the being
Hmm.
in yourself. That's how you protect. Period.
Yeah. And obviously, I would say awareness comes into play with all of this. The more you're aware of, your thoughts, energy, all of that, then it's easier to manage this and use it properly.
Yeah. The more that you are aware, and that's a really good point that you bring up, the more that you become aware of what you are and who you are, the more aware you can be, especially for people who are more empaths, right? These are people who
Mm.
can take on energy, but a lot of the time they don't realize that they're taking on other people's as their own. And so they start to have these worries, being like, I never worried about this before, but oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm feeling this pit in my stomach and I'm worried.
Mhm.
I've never worried about money before, but all of a sudden I'm worried about money, not yours. But when you can start to,
Which is a whole different thing,
whole different thing.
by the way.
But as you can see, energy is everything.
Yeah.
Everything. There's not one thing that we touch in this world that isn't energy.
No.
Physical
I
thing.
read somewhere where you just kind of said, things are in this kind of shape state that you see this 3D image, but it's still energy, but it would just, transform into something else at some point, but still
Right.
some kind of energy.
Yeah, we're all energy. Trees are energy, air is energy, the earth is energy. Pens are energy.
Yeah.
Everything, like clearly our computers, right? Like everything emits energy. Whether or not we have like a personal tie or feeling to it is different, but everything has it. You feel good around certain things, you feel not so good in others, and that's all energy too. That's all it is. And so when you learn how to work with and understand yours, and the more you become aware, the more you heal the things that are holding you back. The more in tune you are with yours, the more you can tell when, hey, I'm being pulled out of mine right now. I can get back, right? It's about giving yourself almost this roadmap to coming back to who you are every single time,
Mm.
because nobody's perfect. I get pulled out of it sometimes, and this is what I do. I can come back easily because I know how. I know who I am.
Yeah.
And there's this whole return to self that I think a lot of people forget in this entrepreneurial journey. It'll show you where you're not being yourself for sure, but how do you get back to it?
Hmm.
How do you know who you are in the first place? And that becomes a really difficult thing for people. A lot of people question it and they've thrown the towel well before they're ready.
Yeah.
But it's just because they
I
simply
think that's
haven't done their stuff inside.
yeah. And I would say it's a journey. I mean, don't expect it to like unravel all at once. I mean, it's gonna take time. You have to figure things out. It's just like with everything else. I mean, the messaging down for all of that stuff too is something that it's not gonna sit with you the first time you try to dig into that. It's gonna change and
Yeah.
evolve just like you do. And yeah, just gotta go back to the root cause. Like you just said though, you have to go back to, who were you when you were a kid and embrace
Yeah.
that. And don't forget all of that bad stuff that happened to you that made you close off or whatever.
Yeah. There's so many things that happen, right? There's so many things. And some people can say, well, I had a perfect childhood,
Mm.
but I still can't
At
get
least
there.
maybe that's just what you remember
Right.
though, right?
But there's also, when we start looking at these things, it can be like, hey, like there's death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's a term that my husband used years ago. And I'm like, oh, it makes so much sense. Death by
Hmm.
1,000 paper cuts. What is that? It's just kind of like that, like almost like that scratching on your like if you were just like to scratch your
Hmm.
skin, that doesn't hurt. But if you were to do it repeatedly over time, you're going to create a wound. And you
Yeah.
might not even know what it is. And if you don't heal that wound, it can become infected. And then when it becomes infected, it starts spreading. But you don't think it looks infected, right? But that's when it starts to go inside. And so these little tiny scratches can sometimes cause little infections with where you are, but that doesn't mean that you can't heal that too. And I think it's a really beautiful opportunity to be able to do something like that. And granted, people are like, oh, well, healing can be scary. I don't want to think about, like, for people who have trauma, who have, like, repeated, like, really heavy stuff, or like
Hmm.
even not one off type of like traumatic incidences. They think that those are the things that shape them. They're like, I don't want to go back into it. It's scary for me. The
Right.
way
Right.
that I work, even if it's death by 1,000 paper cuts or something bigger, is to work with people with where they are right now and then move them and shift them in a way that allows them to feel safe and seen and heard and good enough and all of these things. Because until you feel seen and safe and good enough and all those things inside, nothing outside of you is good. Nothing.
Mm.
And so when you start working with yourself, it becomes this really safe place where one time, you might think that this is scary to do. It actually becomes one of the most empowering things that you can do. You're taking your power back every single time you uncover and you heal. And it happens quickly.
Mm.
When you allow yourself to do it, it happens quickly. It's almost like, hey, I've been avoiding that one email for like a week. Right? And then it takes you 5 minutes to write it at most. And you're like, oh, that feels so good. I just did it, right? That's what it can be like sometimes. And sometimes it does require a bit more time. But every single time that I've ever worked with somebody who's actually had very major and those types of things, and they've tried everything else and they're looking to explore other ways to work with themselves, you know, working with the part of their mind and their energy together and who they are and uncovering who they are and helping them believe that first before we even start removing. That's the important part because they can always return back to a place that's safe because it's who they are. It's beautiful.
Mm.
But you can do this. I do this one on one with some pretty, with some pretty big things. Or I have a group coaching program too that works with people who are just like, I don't understand why I'm being held back. And then they're like, oh, that's why I'm being held back. And this happens within the first session. They're like, oh, and then you work on it, right? But it's a supportive
Yeah.
group. And support is so important while we're going through this. And also understanding that we all have similar issues, even though we're all
Oh yeah.
unique. So that's fine too. But
Yeah.
no one's ever
And I
alone.
think, yeah. I mean, that I think that you pointed out something really huge, that support
Yeah.
when you're in the world that we are,
Yeah.
because it's so easy to sit there all alone behind your computer, and maybe you have a partner, spouse, whatever, but they might not get it. They're not in that world. They maybe have a regular 9 to 5, so for them it's just like, yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah. And what you like is similar to what you do, right? It's like we're just pulled back enough where we can see exactly, like that we're almost like that bird's eye view, being able to see everything, right? And you're like, oh, no,
Hmm.
this is where we need to work. That's where we need to work, right?
Yeah.
And it's really helpful. It just helps people move through stuff so much faster than waiting like 10, 20, or 20 years, or like just being like, ah, I'm done. I'm done, right? And being like, this
Yeah.
is just as good as it's going to get. When you know for certain in your mind, there's that resistance. You're like, no, I know for certain there's better, but I just can't get there. And that's when having support, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful for that, right? Like, that's what support is. I receive support, but I also support others, right?
Hmm.
Coaches need coaches. Healers need
Yes,
healers. We
exactly.
all we're all here to work together. And if anybody is ever here saying like, I can just do this by myself, well, number one, that might be a trauma response too.
Mm. Oh yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I can relate to that, because growing up, I kind of had to do things
yeah,
myself. Ask for help. No, you didn't get help. So okay, well then, I have to figure this out my own.
yeah.
And then you get stuck in that cycle as you grow up, not asking for help.
And it
And I think that's why it's important to, when we talk about trauma, it doesn't have to be like this dark, scary
doesn't have to
thing
be
that
dark.
you had experienced. It can be just small
Yeah.
things.
Little things. I've
Yeah.
worked with people who have lost like a toy out in the ocean, and they're like, well, no wonder I hold things back so much and
Yeah.
I hold them so tight to myself. Like literally little
Uh-huh.
things,
Yeah. You
also
might.
big things.
That is definitely something you don't think about at
No,
all.
but
Wow.
how are you ever going to get back there if you don't actually like have somebody to help you uncover that?
Hmm.
It's just really
Yeah, and I
interesting.
think that's probably the biggest part, just uncovering that, just digging that up.
Yeah.
It's not so much about dealing with it,
Yeah.
because as an adult you get it. Okay, well, that was fine.
Yeah.
I'll live through that. But now
Right.
you know where it's coming from, so you can start taking some different kinds of
Yeah.
actions
I was just working
or
with a
becoming
client
aware.
before I came on here, and they were we were uncovering the stuff that was holding them back.
Hmm.
And they've done a ton of work. I'd say pretty spiritual as well, and open to this type of work too, or at
Hmm.
least interested in it, right? And when I was working with them, I started asking questions, and these things mean nothing to me. I don't know what any of it means. I'm just like, what is this? And I help people get to the root of what's actually holding them back. They're like, I didn't even know or have thought about this year. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, funny. They're like, how do you know this? I'm like, well, how do I know anything? I'm highly intuitive. And so I started moving in, and like I receive things as signs and symbols. And sometimes I hear, like, or just know. And I'm like, well, what's this tied to this? And they're like, it makes so much sense. And then they go into the story. I'm like, oh, well, that was going to be my next question. So
Hmm.
when those synchronicities start, happening, I'm like, well, we're here. Let's go clear out the emotions and the feelings and the things that are really holding you back in this space, and let's clear it. This is somebody that I work with in my group coaching program, right?
Hmm.
And I use group coaching again in fake air quotes, because it's not just a coaching program, it's helping people heal and helping them work with themselves, find themselves so they can be themselves in person, in front of the
Hmm.
people that they are here to serve. Because anybody who's in a service based industry, whether it is an online entrepreneur, a creative entrepreneur, or just somebody who is here to help somebody else, I'm not quite sure if everybody realizes, but that's healing for somebody else another way too. So, in actuality, I feel like I work with people who are here to help. And Ken, you are healing. Other people in the online space are healing. But you
Hmm.
can only help heal somebody to the extent that you've been healed too, right?
Ah, yes, good point.
And so the more that you can show up as yourself, the more that you can help other people. So your
Hmm.
business is then directly tied to the amount that you're healed. The more that you heal, the more that you can give, the more you can share, the more that you can just show up and be. It took me a really
Hmm.
long time to understand this as what it really is.
Yeah, I mean, same for me. I mean, showing up has been like the probably one of the biggest obstacles in business for sure. And I had to go through a couple processes. I think the one thing that released it the most at the time was human design,
Mm-hmm.
because that just showed me who I really was
Yeah.
in some kind of strange way. I have no idea how that works, but it was so scary spot on. I mean, you can take all the personality tests you want in the world, but it's never
Well, it's
like
astrology
really
based.
spot on. Yeah,
It goes back to an
but
ancient practice that has been around for thousands,
mhm.
right?
And it was scary,
Yep.
but it just learned me to accept, that I am who I am, and it's okay.
Yeah. Human design, I think, is a
But at the
really,
same time, there was still some work that needed to be done, though.
just because somebody can tell you who you are doesn't mean that there's not stuff that you're like, well, now what do I do with all this? Great. I know who I was born here to be, and this makes sense.
Yeah,
But now
but it
what?
was one first important step,
Yeah.
kind of.
But now what? And I
Hmm.
also, I love human design because I think it makes all of this a little bit more accessible for people to like wrap their minds around, like, oh, well, this makes
Yeah.
sense. But then it's about taking it that step deeper and not necessarily having to rely on all of these things after you get that picture painted for you. It's about
Hmm.
internally sourcing who you are instead of having something else tell you who you are. Right. And even
Yeah.
though, yes, it's written in the stars, I believe this stuff, right? Um,
Yeah.
it's undeniable how accurate some of these things are.
Hmm.
But when you want to start taking it that next step further, it's about trusting that inner self. And that's all energy. That's releasing the
Hmm.
energetic things that aren't yours. And a lot of it's not yours. Most of it's not yours. The things that are yours are the things that are higher: the happiness, the joy, the love, the calm, the peace,
Hmm.
the contentment, all of that's yours. The things that aren't
Yeah,
yours are the things that are heavy and like, and tired,
that's a good point.
exhausted.
Yeah.
Not yours. Not yours. Because don't you feel like you're more yourself? Have you ever caught yourself saying something like that? I feel more like myself when you're feeling really good. But when you start to say, oh, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out, I'm overwhelmed, and frustrated, that's your not self.
Hmm.
I don't know.
How do you start even uncover that? I mean, because that happens like daily,
Right?
maybe, so it's a big thing.
I'm poking holes. I'm kidding. No, it's about uncovering the things that are holding you back. What is the
Yeah, you
source of
gotta you
those?
gotta look a little bit deeper than just saying, "Oh, I'm overwhelmed." It's like, okay, why am I?
What's causing it?
What's causing
I think
this?
the
Yeah.
question, asking the question why, is one of the most disempowering things you can ever ask yourself, your
Hmm.
business, anybody. Why? It's like having your kid in the back of the car being like, why is the sky blue? Why is it
Yeah.
this way? You're like, I don't know. What is your,
And guess what we're learning sometimes though? Stop asking
yeah,
why.
stop asking
I don't know.
why.
It's like, okay, I'll never ask why again.
Yeah. But if they were to say, well, what does this mean? Different question. How can I do
Yeah.
this? Different question. Stop asking yourself why. Start asking yourself what and how questions. You're going to get much farther ahead in your life. I can tell you this right now. Because it puts you in action, gives you something to do and to
True.
think about versus the whys, because the
Hmm.
whys start to cloud your mind. I think a why is an energy leak. Why is it this
Yeah.
way?
I mean, it could just become a rabbit hole
Yeah,
basically.
you
But if you
question.
ask how can I get out of this overwhelm, or
Yeah.
you know, that's a different
Right. It
question.
takes you
Question
out of
for
that
sure.
hypothesis, if this, then that, right? It puts you
Hmm.
into this question of why? And that's really disempowering. You're never going to find an answer that suits
True.
you because that why will beget another why. You're like, well, why is this? Well, why did this happen? Da, 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 da. But what
Hmm.
caused this? Okay. Now we can,
Hmm.
how else can get you something, right? turns your mind in a little bit of a different place, into a place of more action. And that's working more subconsciously because you're
Hmm.
able to start sourcing your answers. It puts you back into your default. But if your default is connected to old patterns and beliefs and things that happen, then you also still might not get your answer. So I help rip away the old patterns. I help integrate the new
Hmm.
ones. Everything works together. We're an ecosystem. Like messaging is an ecosystem, right?
Hmm.
We are an
Hmm.
ecosystem too. We're energy.
So true. So we talked a lot about subconscious and energy, but we barely touched on spirituality. I'm a bit curious about this because I don't know too much about it. Uh, but I love talking about woo stuff. So
Oh, me too.
can you share something good with us,
You
please?
see all my things. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Spirituality is not just crystals. It is not just thinking about the universe. It's not.
Mm.
Spirituality is really the return to yourself and your higher knowing. So if you ever hear somebody say your higher self, they're like,
Yeah.
what does that? Well, it means that you are tapping into your intuition, your inner knowing, who you are here to be at a soul level. And I think most people
Mm.
can agree that we all have a soul,
Yep.
right? And this doesn't have to be religious. I'm not religious, but I appreciate a lot of religion,
Hmm.
right? I kind of like to take a little bit of everything. Like, oh, that's really beautiful. I love that. I'm
Yeah.
going to practice that myself, right? Anything that's based in love and that's based in like, hey, this feels good.
Exactly.
You
Yes.
practice it, right? Like when we're thinking about energy and spirituality, also combined, because energy is really working with your higher self. It's working with yourself at a soul
Hmm.
level. So spirituality can also connect you with, things outside of yourself too, a more open awareness. And when you're more open to things, you're able to receive. We start going into universal laws, like the law of attraction. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this, but you can't have the law of
Hmm.
attraction without having a lot of other laws in place too. It's not just one thing that works at the time, right?
Right.
There are different things where you have to actually be in action in order to, right? You can't just sit here and be like, oh, because I'm higher energy, I'm just going to attract all these great things. No, that doesn't happen that way. It doesn't. Like, you can't just be like, I am energetic match. Well, of course you are, but if your energy is also not being shared and reciprocated,
Right.
right, then you can't. There's a law of reciprocity in there too. So there's like people are talking about these universal laws, right? And sometimes they're like, oh, there's 7, there's 12, there's 13, whatever. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of different universal laws that govern us. And that's not
Mm.
to mean that you need to go buy an entire encyclopedia and try to figure all them out. All that means is that you just need to come back to yourself and act from that place. That's all this is. But that
Mm.
also means that you have to put yourself into action and share. And because we're all here to work with each other. We're
Yeah.
not here to be these singular, like hiding behind, or because that's not showing who we are or showing up in our true essence, right? Our essence is love. Our essence is beauty. Our essence
Mm.
is to share. And if you ever feel like you're being pulled out of these things, it is a question that you can ask yourself: what can I do to bring myself back? That's really important. And if you feel like you're out of being able to share with people, if you feel like you're out of integrity with yourself, if you feel like, you know, things are hard, that means that you have the opportunity to simplify and that you've just gone away from what you know. Nothing is hard.
Mm.
Nothing. It's a choice to let it be hard. Granted, you can't choose the things that happen to you, but you can choose the way that you respond to them. And that,
Yes.
in essence, will work with your energy. And granted, some things are really hard. I
Yeah.
understand that. Some things are challenging,
Yeah.
very challenging. I had PTSD. I understand. I get it.
But still, there is a choice,
When I
regardless.
realized that I didn't have to feel a certain way anymore,
Hmm.
I chose to feel the difference. That didn't mean that there wasn't a ton of healing going.
Hmm.
There was a ton. Years worth. decades. But as I continued to heal more and more, I stopped letting it impact in who I was. And that is about bringing back that inner power inside of yourself. And when I can say I had PTSD, instead of saying I have it, that's where I knew I was healed or healing a lot more.
Right.
There are still things that may surface that I have not been put back into a fight or flight state in a very long time. And there I know is where I have healed that part of me. Granted, we're all healing because we're all evolving. Like when you see your children going through these growth spurts and their bodies ache, or like and when they're really young, like they might drool a little bit or maybe get a little temperature. Their bodies are growing, but their bodies are also healing as they grow, right? Same thing as when we're sick and we just get better, our bodies are also healing, right? And so that doesn't mean that like we're always healing in some level. We're healing until the day we transition. We grow and evolve. We're just growing and evolving into something else when that happens. And it's just really interesting to look at any type of healing as a way for me to grow and evolve. And when you start making even that shift in your mind, I'm not just healing, I'm growing, I'm evolving, I'm becoming who I've always been. That's really a beautiful thing. That's what I help people get back.
And you've been on quite a healing journey yourself lately. Want to share a little bit about that?
What specifically? I'm always healing.
Well, the last thing that you did was you went to the shaman.
Yeah. So I
and
work
now
with the
that
shaman.
was.
I work with the shaman. I work with a very powerful shaman. And it started with him working to help heal me energetically too. Again, healers need healers. Somebody who just knows a little bit. He always says that he is 1 or 2 steps ahead, but in my mind, I'm like, wow, you're like eons ahead. But he always just says, no, I'm 1 or 2 steps ahead. But it's really funny. I feel that way too. I'm like, no, I'm just 1 or 2 steps ahead. We're human. We're in a human body. We're having experiences. We feel discomfort. It's just like how uncomfortable will you let yourself feel, right? It's about being able to work with your mind in a different way and also being able to receive what you already know. And so I have been learning from. I was invited to learn from him. And it's been a really beautiful thing because as I work with him to help heal other people, I am also on a deeper healing journey of my own. And boy, oh boy, that's fun. I'm kidding. No, it's eye-opening. But the thing is that when you work with a skilled healer, somebody who is also grounded and not, I think, when people talk about spirituality and healing, they're like, oh, they were like, I don't know about that. It's about working with somebody who feels really grounded, approachable, real, and isn't coming at it from this like, oh, like airy fairy type of thing. Because let me tell you, it's in that where people are just like, wow, I'm not sure I can be healed by them. And then they start questioning whether or not it's, and not to say that everybody's not on their own journey, but you have to maintain a certain level of personal power and healing of your own in order to help heal other people. And this is really important because if you go to somebody who is inexperienced or who hasn't made this their life's journey and who hasn't found the grounding, they're unable to hold the healing space for you. And so in working with the shaman that I work with, and this is not something you get certified in. This is a way of being. You can't be certified in a weekend to heal it. You have to heal yourself. We're all healers. I'm going to tell everybody this right now. It's just to the level of healing that you're able to do based upon the healing that you. And so I've gone through some journeys, I guess you can say that, where I've had that mirror placed in front of me being like, wow, I didn't realize that was mine.
Hmm.
I didn't realize that's what I needed to hear. And it's when I was held in that space, that deeper space, being like, whoa, what? That I was able to heal really quickly, get to it, get to the root, find what I needed to do, heal it, move forward.
Hmm.
That's what working with somebody who's grounded enough to help become that mirror for you. He doesn't tell anybody what they need to heal. He helps you find it out yourself.
Right.
And when you can be that mirror for somebody else, I know I'm very triggering for people. I'm meant to be triggering for, because when I trigger somebody, I help them understand what they need to heal. But I do it in a really nice way. I'm very healing, I'm very supportive, but people are like, oh, I know exactly what I need to heal. I feel so seen, is what I've heard quite a few times. How do you know this? How, like, I haven't let myself get there yet. I'm like, well, here you go. And they're like, I needed this. Thank you. You know, it's when they were able to receive that, that
Yeah.
they were able to overcome it. And so, very similar for myself too. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to do. So, yeah, I mean, working with somebody like him and learning from somebody like him and being able to help other people is what I know I'm here to do.
Hmm.
That's my purpose.
Yeah. And I can imagine that experience helped you in
Yeah.
the way that you can help other
Yeah.
people in a whole different new way.
Yeah. And I work with him consistently and constantly. So, you know, being with him in person was beautiful.
Hmm.
Probably learned more in that experience than I ever would have on.
Yeah.
And it's years worth of experience, decades worth of now integrating and knowing different things that I don't think I ever would have gotten to had I not had beautiful experience.
Yeah.
So it's nice. I enjoy it. It's
And it
also
goes
very
back to
personal
what
and
kind of what
beautiful.
we talked about earlier, like
Yeah.
having that support, having someone to talk to, someone who's been there before you, who
So important.
understands what you're going through.
Oh, it's so important. And it's about allowing yourself to receive that help too, because when we're
Mm.
not in a receiving mode, we are actually very blocked. It's like, you know, the in and out of the tides, right? In order to have, you know, a tide coming in, a tide also has to go out. It goes
Yeah.
in and out. It's a wave, right? It has to go in and out in order to have that energetic. It's right.
Hmm.
And so if you are not letting yourself receive, nothing else is coming out or not coming out the way that it needs to. It might be getting trickled or leaked out, right? You have a dam there instead. But at some point, something's going to open up. And wouldn't you rather have control over what comes out? Right? That's the energetic exchange. I allow in, I allow out. I require this, you require that. Like, right? You're giving and taking at the same time. It's people who continue to take, they're not getting anywhere. But it's also people who continue to give but not let themselves receive. They're not getting anywhere either.
Yeah.
So it's about allowing yourself and unblocking those things that keep you from receiving, but also keep you from giving. Or like, oh, I'm afraid people are going to steal my stuff.
Hmm.
I was in that one for a very long time,
Yeah.
right? Or I give so much and I'm really tired. Why do I never have anything coming good back to me? Why am I not getting the people in my programs that I want to be able to help? And maybe it's we're having our focus and our minds on things that just aren't in service and more on the money.
Hmm.
Because when you put yourself in service in the allowing and the receiving, that's when everything just comes, because money's energy too.
Yeah.
Oh, I can go deep with this.
I'm sure it can, and maybe we should schedule another episode for that.
I would love to come on for another episode.
Because we're coming on that like 45-minute mark, so
Yeah,
where we
that's good.
end kind of things. But
Yeah.
is there anything that you feel like we haven't touched on that you really would like to say?
I feel like I'm a very open book. Um, I think pay attention. Pay attention to where you feel like you're frustrated. Pay attention to what feels hard because it's a simple choice to change it. when you're ready to change. But just know that any time that you let something be hard for too long is a choice.
Mm.
And what you want to receive will be blocked if you let it be.
Beautiful.
And you have the ability, I think, is the biggest part in all of this. With that choice, you have the ability to move forward. Because if you can think it, it already can exist. You cannot think about what you are not. So just know that if you think that you're a millionaire, you are. Right? Or if you know that you're supposed to be this person serving so many people, then you are. But why don't I have? You find yourself saying, why don't I? Or this is too hard, or I should be here, or these like self-deprecate. If you find yourself in that, know that that is your opportunity. That is what needs to be. And once you can start to see that any of those more negative states are the place where you have the opportunity to let go of so that you can receive all that joy and love and happiness and all the good stuff that is meant to be yours. That's when you are ready to move forward. That those are the opportunities to be like, that is where I can heal. That is where I can receive. That is where I can allow. That is the place where you move.
Perfect. And I'm sure people are gonna be curious. So how can they find you on the interwebs, or how can they work with you, basically?
Sure. Well, the best place to find me is on my Instagram account. I am not very active on there on the page, but I'm very active in my DM. Send me a DM. I love talking to people. So I'm at lindsayjani.co. I'm Lindsay with an AY. So if you do an EY, I don't know where you're going to go. But Lindsay with an AY, lindsayjani.co. And that is the best place. And you have all the links there to my website, which is lindsayjani.com. Very easy to make it straightforward. So those are the best places. One-on-one work would be through my website, or if you just have some questions and want to know how you can move forward, just shoot me a DM. I'd love to say hi.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing. I mean, this, like I said, there was a conversation I didn't know where it was going to go, but I loved it. It was great. So thank you.
I didn't know where it was going to go either. And I very much appreciate you having me on. And yeah, it's been beautiful. Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.